Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, his family, his companions, and all those who call to his way to the day of judgment. As to what follows, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So alhamdulillah, this is a continuation of our new Muslim corner, and the intention is not to have a formal class, but it is to be bringing steady information dealing with the fundamentals and basis of Islamic way of life. And the intention is to bring some basic aspects of Islam and then open up the floor for questions. And those who are online can put their questions into the chat there, and alhamdulillah, we have a very large group of people who are following us. And so this is the beginning of the new season. And in this light, we want to look, our intention is to try to look at Islamic lifestyle. Because with all the problems and the chaos in the world today, it is important for new Muslims, and that is what this class is about, people who have recently embraced Islam, or people who are interested in Islam, to recognize that Islam is a way of life. So it's not just political, it's not just a cultural thing where you wear certain clothes, it's not just your eating habits, but it's a total way of life. And the essence of the way of life is the relationship between the individual and his or her Lord. Because the word Islam itself means istislam, submission or surrender to the will of Allah Azza wa Jal, creator of the heavens and the earth. And so we want to focus on this, how we can live as Muslims. And there are a lot of practical areas that people who have recently embraced Islam will be running into. Areas where you have questions, areas where there might be a lot of confusion, and that's the intention of the class, is to really give you what you could call like an outlook, an Islamic outlook. So how to approach different aspects of your life as a Muslim. We're trained how to deal with Islam in the masjid. So you're trained how to purify yourself, how to make salat, whatever, masjid procedure. But the question is, the big question is, what do you do outside the masjid? When you're not around Muslims and you're dealing with issues, sometimes new issues. How do you approach these issues? How do you see yourself now? Because being a Muslim means that you have, in a sense, you have made a change. But in the words of one of the great North African scholars, Sidi Abdurrahman al-Akhdari, who did a text, and he mentioned in it what is required of a new Muslim. And this has been really the guide for us that we've used over the past couple of years in terms of the areas that we are looking at. And so, number one, that a person who embraces Islam should correct and authenticate his faith. So by saying you need to correct your faith or authenticate your faith, that means you have a faith. Like some people say, either you're a Muslim or you're a pagan or you're an infidel. This is not an Islamic approach, because we believe that prophets and messengers came to every nation and every tribe. Prophets came to China, to India, to Africa, to Europe, to the Americas. And every nation and tribe at one point had a warner who was teaching them to believe in one God, live a good life, believe in the Creator, and that's basically what Islam is. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described himself as the last of a long line of prophets. So sometimes they say Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. Okay, but other prophets are also prophets of Islam. from way back to Adam alayhi salam, the first human being, and even prophets like Noah, Abraham, Ibrahim, Moses, right? Musa alayhi salam. We consider Moses to be a prophet of Islam. Now that might be a very controversial statement to make today with all the tensions in the world there. But for us, Musa alayhi salam, who's mentioned so much in the Quran itself, is one who submitted to the will of Allah. His tribe, whether he's from the children of Israel, and Israel is Jacob, Yaqub, that's his ethnicity. That's his tribe. But his religion is submission to the will of Allah. So therefore, Moses is a prophet of Islam, and Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, is a prophet of Islam. So this is how we look at all the different messengers, because we're mainly talking about submission to the Creator. And these prophets and messengers who came to every nation, every tribe, at some point, they may have left, but their teachings are still there. In some cases, not much. Other cases, there's a lot of the teachings. So therefore, when a person is coming into Islam, they already have a concept of the Creator, some sort of force, powerful force. If you don't say God or the Creator, maybe you say nature. The Marxist-Leninists say dialectical materialism. However you want to say it, you believe that there are powers that are greater than us. Everybody knows that we have to die. Okay, so based upon what you had within your teachings, you need to correct it. Those who come from what we call the people of the book, the Christians and the Jews who accept Islam, when they come into Islam, they actually, in many cases, if they were practicing their religion, there's a lot of aspects of their way of life which is the same. So you don't have to make a big change in a lot of your concepts. My family was originally a Christian family. And so when I eventually came into Islam, much of the morality of Islam was the same. So it was no major change that I had to make, but praying, how to pray, fasting, then the concept of God, and especially the Trinity, divinity of Christ. So there's certain key things. This is why the scholar is saying, correct your faith, authenticate it, and make sure that your faith is from the prophet or the messenger who brought it, and not from something else. And so if you thought, as a Christian, that Easter is part of your faith, because the Easter celebrations of the spring are, maybe the largest Christian ceremonies, you're making a mistake. Because Easter is a pagan, we found out to be a pagan so-called goddess of the spring, and they believed in the north that she waved her wand, and after the winter everything turned green. That's Easter or Ostre. It's a pagan religion. That's why Easter has eggs, rabbits, right? Fertility symbols. That has nothing to do with Jesus. So a person now who believes in Jesus has got to say, okay, wait a minute. This is wrong. This is not the right faith. You see, so you're correcting the mistakes, you're authenticating, but you're not necessarily leaving everything in your understanding. The same thing with your family. If you're accepting Islam, you're not leaving your mother or your father. You're not leaving your ethnic group, your racial group, your linguistic group. You're the same. And you still respect your family. But the difference is your relationship with the Creator. That has changed. Okay, so you're still the same person. Don't try to be somebody else that you're not. Right? But correct the wrong aspects of your culture. And so this is what we're looking at now. We're trying to look at different aspects of our life. Sometimes areas that are not necessarily spoken about in the mosque where they're giving a Friday sermon, or you might not necessarily hear discussions about this. We want to bring up some of these aspects in order to develop this outlook, an Islamic outlook on things. Okay? Secondly, Sidi Abdurrahman, he said that you should seek the knowledge of your personal obligations, right? Like purification, prayer, fasting. You have to seek it. So if you're a new Muslim, nobody's going to force you to do this. And the more you seek this knowledge is the higher your level will be. And there are some people who move at a rapid pace because they're serious about learning their obligations. Others may take years. But the important thing is to keep moving and keep progressing. We can't do everything right away. And what we found out is that many people who are benefiting from our class are actually Muslims, born in a Muslim family, but they found their faith maybe after 20 years. So they were Muslim in name, but not in practice. Okay, so that revival of faith. Okay, I don't want to say born again, because that's like a Christian thing, right? But there are Muslims who are literally born again. His name was Ahmed, she was Zainab, but she wasn't practicing Islam. And then at a certain point in life, the light goes on. So that state of mind is similar to a new Muslim. Okay, so this is what makes up our class. And this is what makes it unique, how we're trying to approach it. And the third area is to stay within the limits. Stay within the limits set by Allah. So we are taught that Islam is Sirat al-Mustaqim. We're reading this in the opening chapter. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Right? Guide us to the straight path. This is a prayer that we're making every time you make salat. It's a dua. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. So what is the straight path? And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that the Sirat al-Mustaqim is a straight, clear path and like a main highway, but there's little paths that can take you astray. Okay, so this is the straight path. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Taraktukum ala al-mahajjat al-bayda." He said, I have left you on a clear way. Layluha kan-nahariha. He said, its night is like its day. That's how clear this is. وَلَا يَزِيغُ عَنْهَا إِلَّا هَالِكٌ. And only a person who is destined to perish will go off this path. So once we know the limits, how you stay on the main road, okay, this is what a new Muslim has to do as well. So this section, we spent a lot of time, and we'll be going back to certain aspects throughout the year of correcting and authenticating the faith, right? Going back to our sections on Iman, our sections on Islam. We'll go back periodically. Okay, also sometimes there will be certain aspects of the year, like Ramadan may come, the month of fasting. The pilgrimage comes. There's certain things that come up, or maybe a request, and we can focus on a certain aspect from the rituals of Islam. But right now, we're on the third area, and that is the limits. So we want to look at certain areas of life, things that we're doing, to know the limits. Okay, and this is of critical importance now, because the world has become very confused. And there's a lot of information around when we're online, and you think you're on an Islamic site, okay, but it might be totally un-Islamic, but with the name Islam, but it has a nice title online. The person might look like a Muslim. And this is the reality. And there are, over 2 billion Muslims in the world. And when you go to pilgrimage, inshallah, when you travel to parts of the Muslim world, you will see, even in Mecca and Medina, you will see that there's so many people. There are some people who are confused about their faith. They're Muslims, and they carry out certain rituals. They carry out rituals there, which are maybe more Hindu than they are Islamic. Or they're more Buddhist than they are Islamic, but they don't know. So if you know your limits, you won't get caught up in following some of these people because you're not sure. See, so this is the concept that we're talking about. And in order to really approach these subjects, because this formal study that we're doing, you'll hear Muslims use the word fiqh, right? Fiqh. And fiqh means understanding. That's all it means. Sometimes it's described as Islamic jurisprudence, meaning like what are the laws of this and that. But the word fiqh only means your understanding. So what's your fiqh in this issue? So it's to have the right understanding. And alhamdulillah, it's been codified. Scholars have come over the years and codified information to make it easy, for other Muslims in how to approach different subjects. But in order to understand fiqh, there is another subject, and we're not going into the details. It's called usul al-fiqh, and that is the principles of understanding. So when you approach a certain issue, there's a certain food given to you, right? You're invited to go out to a certain occasion. It's a celebration. What do? Sometimes if you're coming from a non-Muslim family, your family invites you to an occasion. Christmas party, right? Somebody's birthday. Whatever it is, because they have their ways. What's your fiqh? You see? What's your understanding? Okay, so your foundations of fiqh are going to help you. There's certain principles this will help you through. And of these principles, we looked at a number of them. I've just picked out a few that are critical for us, as we go deeply into our course. And one of the principles is that aslul asha al-ibaha, that the essence of all things is permissibility. So in other words, when you're looking at any subject, the basis of it is permissibility. Allah created the creation and set it out in a way that human beings, we could benefit. So many types of food, so many different aspects of life. It's positive, right? So the basis of when you approach a subject, we have to approach in a positive way. Because so much has been done against Islam, or like anti-Islamic lifestyle, you'll see Muslims will say to you as a new Muslim, don't do this, don't do that. So you think the whole of Islam is don't. But the essence of Islam is you are allowed to do things, right, except there are exceptions. So your food, your fruits, your animals to eat, things are basically permissible. However, there are certain animals or certain types of food, right, that are forbidden. Okay, and the forbidden aspect is a small percentage. The permissible aspect is the major one. And so this is important because sometimes we get overwhelmed and think that this is too much. How are you going to live your life, like this? But the more fiqh you have, the more understanding you have, you'll be able to go anywhere in the world, inshallah, any situation, and you can make an educated decision, right, as a Muslim. Okay, so this is the essence, of the first principle. And the concepts that we're dealing with within this study are also called halal and haram. Okay, so these are the two terminologies. And halal means that which is lawful. Okay, it is that which is permitted with respect to which no restriction exists. Right? And the doing of which the lawgiver has allowed. So Allah has allowed this, and that's when we say it's halal. I mean, normally today, people will say halal, you mean halal food. So you go to a restaurant, you say, is it halal? And some people will put the sign on the window, say halal. Right? But it's more than that. There's halal dress. Right? There's halal earnings. Everything has halal, and the other aspect is haram. Okay? And haram is that which the lawgiver has absolutely prohibited. So anyone who commits it is liable to incur the punishment of Allah in the hereafter, as well as legal punishment in this world. That's the haram, right? So the halal and the haram. And there is a book done by a great scholar of Islam, Yusuf al-Qaradawi. It's called Halal and Haram in Islam. Okay, and he's a great scholar. And this book is actually online. You could download it, you could buy it. And he's one of the more balanced scholars. Okay, he has a middle approach to things. Some people think that he's too easy, some people think he's too hard, but he's sort of in the middle, and this is our approach. We're trying to take a balanced position, especially for new Muslims, because a new Muslim is not required to be doing everything immediately. So halal and haram in Islam, and his name is Yusuf al-Qaradawi, Q-A-R-A-D-A-W-I, Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Okay, so this is sort of a basis for the classes that we're running. And of course, we bring in a lot of other aspects, but that is the base. Okay, so again, what we're looking at, we're trying to look at daily life. Okay, so how do we apply our principles to our daily life? And then how do you make a decision? Because sometimes you're going to be in situations where there's nobody around. You have to make a decision. Do I eat this or not? Do I go to this place or not? And so that's where your fiqh, that's where your understanding comes in. And the more understanding you have, the more fiqh you have, is the easier life becomes. Because you know that there are exceptions. Right? You're not caught in a little corner. And it's also important for us to have a good understanding of things, because Muslims over the years, have developed Islam in different parts of the world with certain scholars, and so there are cultural forms of Islam where the people's culture affects the way they eat and the way they act. But sometimes it's more of their culture than it actually is Islam. So as a new Muslim, or as a person who's reviving their faith, we have to be able to separate Islam from culture. And that's important even for those of us who have come from Muslim families. Because sometimes many of the things that they do are actually their culture. I remember in the area of marriage, and inshallah I hope that we will reach that point, how to deal with the marriage aspects, and that's important for our new Muslims and our revived Muslims. And I used to perform marriages before. Somebody asked me, do I have a marriage license? I don't, because marriages are kind of strange for me. You see a lot of cultural things in marriages, right? And, but on one occasion, I was performing a marriage, and so the imam, you have the bride and the groom, and so before, in some cultures, in some aspects, you have the groom is there with his family, and the bride is represented by her father or her wali, her guardian, right? She can do it herself, or she could give permission for her wali to represent her. And so the imam, if it is that a person is saying, I'm the wali, the imam should actually go to the woman herself and say to her, do you agree to marry this man? Because if she doesn't agree, then that wali is an imposter. Because we have some cultures where women are forced to marry against their will. And that's not really Islamic. Okay? And in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where especially the young women were extremely shy. They didn't even like to speak out that much when an adult comes, especially an official. And so the Prophet ﷺ, let it be known that if a young girl, a young person getting married, and then, they say, okay, do you want to marry this man? And she starts crying. That means no. Because in the early Arab culture, she wouldn't express it in words, right? But when she's crying like that, looking at this guy, okay, that means she doesn't want to marry him, right? But she can't say it. She doesn't want to offend her father. She doesn't want to offend her tribe, but she's crying, right? Now, in this case, cultural Islam, right? In many Indo-Pakistani societies, I don't know whether it's coming from Hinduism or not, but in the marriage, the girl is supposed to be really sad. Okay, and this might sound strange for, Muslims from Trinidad or Guyana, right? Because you've changed, right? But in India and Pakistan, she's supposed to be crying, man. She's supposed to be really sad. If she's smiling, it's almost like something's wrong. Now, I tried to investigate this. I don't know where it comes from. It may be because in Hinduism, when the woman gets married, and then she's stamped, when she gets married, she is that man's, it's like his property. And in some extreme forms of Hinduism, if he dies and he's going to be burnt alive, she is thrown in the fire too. She's thrown in the fire. She's alive, right? But when he dies, there's no more reason for her to live. That's in extreme Hindu culture. It's banned by the Indian government officially now, by the way. But it was a practice of Hinduism. So when he's sick and in his deathbed, she's praying for him to stay alive. And when he dies, okay, when she gets married, right? This is not a happy occasion for the family. They're giving their daughter away, right? She's like the property of somebody else. That's not Islamic. That's not Islamic. In Islam, she has her own rights. She has her own family, right? She can even separate from him. And we're going to talk about this. So it's completely different. So I am innocently just teaching Islam. I'm not from any of the cultures. So I come into the room and ask the girl, do you want to marry this man? And she starts crying. And I looked at the brothers and I said, okay, brothers, this is a problem. They said, no, Brother Abdullah. It's our culture. You see what they did? They said, it's our culture. So she's not against the marriage, but in our culture, she has to seem sad. Okay, this is a small point. But for me at that point, it was serious because I was following the law. Okay, so this is where you have to be able to separate your family's culture, if you come from a Muslim family, and what is actually Islam. Okay, this is the fiqh. And another important principle is that falsely representing haram as halal is prohibited. So if something is not permissible, And then, everybody acts as though it's permissible. And the Prophet ﷺ even said, a group of my nation will make intoxicants halal by giving them other names. And we, for a long time, it's an issue with some of the youth. Can you smoke ganja? Are you smoking marijuana or not? It's not alcohol. Is it permissible? Or as we discussed before, there was a drug in California they call angel's dust. Okay? So they have a lot of nice names for drugs. Sugar. Don't you like sugar? There's a lot of nice names. But the fact that it has this name does not make it permissible. It is the actual substance itself. Is the substance an intoxication? You see? But the Prophet even said there would come a time when they would have nice names for intoxication and they would try to make it permissible. Right? And he said a time will come when people will devour riba, meaning interest. They will be taking interest and they call it trade. Now that's something we're facing today, right? There's a lot of interest around us. And this is a subject that we need to touch on to try to know our ins and our outs. We're all in this. Okay, but look what the Prophet said. The time would come when they would be involved in interest, and they'll call it, no, it's business, brother. It's trade. This is Canada. This is the 21st century. Right? But it's interests, which is haram. It's prohibited. Okay? So this is something which is also not right in Islam. I want to open the floor for any questions that anybody has. Again, this is our workshop. Floor is open for any questions anybody has concerning anything that I've said so far of these basic principles in our fiqh. Floor is open for any questions.
I have a couple, Jay.
Go ahead.
Just on this slide, like you mentioned a few things like marijuana, even sugar. Would you consider sugar haram? Like I would consider it a drug based on how addictive it is. Would you go as far as saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that sugar in some places, I'm originally from the United States, but in some places it was cocaine. But they were calling it sugar. So I don't mean real sugar, although we have problems with sugar, right? But sugar is not haram. I'm not even I'm saying that they use the name sugar for cocaine. Okay? Brown sugar for heroin. Okay? Any other questions that anybody has?
And my second one.
Yeah.
On the first slide, you mentioned like authenticating like our faith.
Mm.
You brought up like other religions. Would that apply to sects of Islam as well?
Yes, I mean, for a new Muslim, and that's the basis of our class, the person is entering into Islam. So therefore, you're basically learning, their faith. But yes, they would be approached by certain people. And as a new Muslim, right away, you have to authenticate it. Like when I came into Islam in America and here, there was a group called the Nation of Islam, right? The Black Muslim Nation of Islam, and their leader, Elijah Muhammad, he said he was the last prophet. And he said Allah was a man who came to Detroit. His name was W.D. Farad Muhammad, and he was a man. But they called themselves Muslims. So and they had a lot of Islamic ways about them too. But to believe that Allah is a man and this person is the last prophet is totally against Islam. So therefore, that even though that person came saying he's Muslim, you got to authenticate this. See, so and there's a lot of groups that are out there today. We don't go into the details of a lot of these groups in this particular class, unless we're asked about it. There are other classes for that. But yes, authenticate your faith. Now, another principle, this sets the ground, for our actual areas we'll go into from next week, inshallah, is that whatever leads to the haram is also haram. So if something is leading you toward haram, then that itself is haram. And this is important because sometimes we're doing things and we say, no, it's not haram. But in the case like being alone with a non-mahram, in other words, the young man, he decides he's going to be alone, with a young, woman. They're going to be alone together. Technically speaking, it's not haram, but it can lead to it. So therefore, we avoid that. Okay? And the other example we used is, because the Quran says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُ الزِّنَا, do not approach adultery. It didn't say, don't commit adultery. The Quran says, do not approach it. You see? Don't come near it. Because it will destroy your whole life. That's how serious it is. Because, our desires is a natural thing in human beings. We are born to procreate, to have children. So it's not wrong to have certain feelings. So but Allah said, don't come near it. See? So if something's going to lead you towards it, then avoid that. You see? So this is fiqh, this is understanding, and it can help you make certain decisions in life. Question?
So, car sales, like at a dealership,
Yeah.
almost like the whole business is run off of making sure that they finance the car. Sure, you can buy the car without like straight up cash, but that's how they run things off finance. If you're the car salesperson and you don't actually deal with the finance part, is that kind of like the situation where you're leading towards something that's wrong but not actually doing it?
Yeah, well, we want to go into work and trades. That'll be part of next week's class. However, when it comes to the interest, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that, the curse of Allah, like the fire of interest, is on the person who gives it, the person who takes it, the person who witnesses it. If you're a witness to it in the transaction, you're part of the curse. Even the person who's witnessing it. Yeah. Yeah. It's clear. See, so, and again, this, it's a struggle in this society, right? But we all have to try to stay on the straight path, because there's a lot of little paths all around us, right? You're on an obstacle course. Okay, but the more you understand is the more you can stay on the straight path. Our life will be more simple. You won't have two cars. You're not going to drive a Lamborghini, right? But at least you can be clean in the eyes of Allah. Question.
Why is interest so bad?
Interest is considered to be one of the major sins, from all the prophets, and that is, lending and is gaining money. Like I say, okay, you can borrow $100 from me, pay me back $150. So I'm gaining $50 for nothing. It's exploitation.
Like I make interest in the back.
Yeah, so I'm saying this is now another level of the interest. It's not the original money lender, right? But it is another level of the interest. And when you see the destruction, if you're a homeowner, I've seen many people who bought a house and they paid for this house 3 times over. Their hard-earned money. And then when they couldn't make the payments, they lost the house. But they actually paid for it already 3 times. That's exploitation. And this is part of how the capitalist system, has exploited people and continues to exploit people. You see? So when you start to get into it, you see what interest has done to people's lives and what it means in a society. And if you live without interest, it's a completely different way of living. And it's hard sometimes for us to see it because we're so caught up with the cobwebs of interest, that are surrounding us. Questions? Any other questions? Yeah.
In reverse, like halal and haram, it's like this is one thing that confuses me right now because, like in the food, I see like a lot of places now like saying that their shoes are halal, and like I hear a lot of opinions. Like some people say it's haram, some people say it's halal, some people say like just avoid it. So I just wanted to like kind of like get an idea so like what we should do in regards to that. And you have a lot of people like I saw it halal.
Yeah, so when you're dealing with the halal food, itself, the basic making of the food halal is to say in the name of Allah, and to sacrifice the animal, cutting, the main veins and, whatnot. As to how it is cut, whether it is with your hand or whether it is with a machine, is the difference of opinion of the scholars. And both positions are authentic. But the way people argue the point, because there's business involved in this too, right? Because if you're starting, like the people who are against the machine slaughter, they came in and said, don't eat that food. It's like you're eating pork, because that's their rival in business, right? They're not being honest with you. And I've seen them in occasions and conferences when they confront each other and the proof is brought to them. They have no argument. It's a difference of opinion. If the animal is slaughtered with a machine, they're saying Bismillah, then it has been allowed by scholars. It's a difference of opinion. So the middle road position is that it is permissible to eat those other types of food. Of course, go with your heart, whatever you feel, but in terms of the fiqh, it is permissible to eat that. Yeah. Now, another principle, which maybe I'll last for tonight, but another principle of our fiqh, our guidance, is that good intentions do not make haram acceptable. In other words, the ends don't justify the means. This is a principle in philosophy too. So if you have a good intention, it doesn't make something that's haram halal. Okay? So the person now, is stealing. They steal, and they say, I'm going to steal this money, but I'm going to give charity. I'm going to give zakat in the mosque. So my intention is to give zakat, but they're going to rob. That does not, the ends in Islam does not justify the means. The means that you get that money is crucial in Islam. And I'll never forget, the brother came to me one Jummah and he said, please, I need a fatwa. And I said, what is it? And he said, I won the lotto. And I'm gonna pay zakat. I'm gonna give to this mosque. Is it okay? I'm gonna give, right? And I told him, I cannot make halal what is haram, brother. I'm sorry, man. I don't care how much zakat you give. But you're not supposed to gamble. You see? So the fact that you thought you had a good intention does not make the action right. No. This is a crucial, position in Islam. Some people lie. They lie, in order to, get certain things. They're telling lies. Okay? Not permissible. Only in extreme circumstances where your life is on the line, where you could possibly tell a lie. You're trying to, get people off in the middle of a war or something like that. You possibly could, but you're not supposed to be lying, in order to spread Islam or to do something good. That's not right. Okay? Any general questions anybody has? Yeah.
Just an example for a lottery situation, say that individual did win the lottery, going forward now, what would you say we should do with those funds?
This is a good question. Like if he's got $20,000, right? What are you going to do with it? There's different opinions. Some scholars say don't even take it, but some would say if you give it back to them, they're going to use it against Islam. So if people, and you're going to see one of the principles that are coming here now, and that is that if necessity makes things permissible, that's not permissible. So in other words, if a person is dying of thirst and they ran into a can of beer, they could drink it in order to live. Okay, so one scholar said, don't give it back to them. Give it to people who are starving to death. So at least it's used for something good. But don't give it to a mosque or anything, any good cause. Islam, no. But for an emergency case, it's better than giving it back to them because they're going to use it for something wrong again. So don't give it back to them. Okay? So this is a key point for us in Islam. Any other general questions anybody has?
Well, it's kind of like similar to that, is because like we were in a situation and like kind of like got thinking about that where like, we were at home and then like I guess like an Uber Eats order like sent to our house accidentally, but it was like haram food, like it was from a restaurant that was just completely haram, and we didn't know what to do with it because like we were told that like we're not supposed to give it to anyone just because it's haram, so to throw it out. So, but it did feel bad just throwing out perfectly good food. So like in that case as well, we like say like it would be still okay to like give to someone to eat. Or just,
Yeah, I mean, one of our principles is that haram is, is haram for everybody, especially if it's pork. I mean, if it was something that has some doubt inside of it, like it's, say, beef or something like that, that has some doubt, and there's somebody starving, right? Then that might be okay. But if it's pork, get rid of it. Because haram for us is haram for everybody. We're not the chosen people, like some people think they are. And everybody else, is, goyams or whatever. No. Haram is haram for everybody. So these are some of our principles. We'll be completing these and then going back into our subject on work and earning, to bring it up again for next week's class. Now, because of the time change, this was a strange night because we're so right in the middle. So that's why we decided to do the class early. But for next week, we can go back to right after Maghrib. Maghrib will be around 7:10 or something like that. So we can go right after Maghrib, we'll start the class. Okay, next week, and we'll fall right into our pattern again. Okay, so have a safe journey home. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.